Our story begins with an unexpected scene where a boy named Doug Meguri and a girl, a Sajiri, was shown in a silent room. Suddenly, a Sajiri began undressing herself in front of him. As she stood half naked in front of him, Meguri's heart leaped out of his chest as he thought to himself that the Miss Teen of Minamamiyajan High School just said she wanted to be his girlfriend. He wondered if that was the double reward of rank 1 stars, and only 2 of them were in the room alone. He gazed at her body and thought that she was too cute, and that he could admire that view forever. Worried, a Sajiri inquired if there was something wrong with her, to which he assured her that nothing was wrong. Furthermore, he instructed her to take off her bra, which caught a Sajiri off guard. While she was slowly unbuckling her hooks, she asked him to not misunderstand, saying that she wasn't the kind of girl who easily showed her body to anyone, but she was willing to do it with the one she liked. Meguri could feel his heart beating like a drum. She removed the only piece of cloth which was covering her upper body, and she exposed her bare body to him. Meanwhile, Meguri was astonished as he pondered that behind the plain uniform was that attractive body. His hand trembled as he began touching her body, and when he pressed his hands against her breasts, she let out a faint moan. She couldn't contain her moans when Meguri was caressing her like that. While doing the deed, he questioned if she liked that, and further asked about her sensitive spots. She called him a pervert, whereas he threatened her that he would stop if she didn't tell him. In response, she told him that it was her lower body. Astonished upon his response, he exclaimed immediately, but soon he thought, why did he have to talk out loud? As per her request, he slowly began sliding his hands down her abdomen, and as he reached further down, he pondered that it was the dream of every man in the school. However, shortly after, he began screaming and exclaiming that his finger was stuck. He couldn't comprehend what was happening, and immediately he logged out of the virtual screen. After that, he threw his gloves and VR headset on the bed, stating that his finger was hurting so much. He couldn't understand what was wrong with that, and when he glanced at the computer screen, he realized that there was an error and overload in the VR emotional feedback system. He felt as if he just slammed his finger into an iron wall, and it all happened just right at the good part too. Just then, he got startled when he heard his phone ringing, and when he checked it, he saw that the call was from Eikawa Akiko. When he picked up the call, the woman on the other side screamed and inquired if he had the data for the Hell Shaft Demon King yet. Meguri had been working on it since the previous day, and yet he forgot to send it. He apologized to her and stated that he would send the data to her immediately. Eikawa exclaimed that they had to compensate the customers if they complained. She further complained to Meguri that his sister just lost 5 minutes because of that data, stating that 5 minutes would be compensated by over an hour of work. That made him snap as he asked her to wait a minute. He exclaimed that he had to stay up all night to do it. Sounds and movements of the king, 150 categories each. He stated that it was cruel of her to order it yesterday and demand for it the next morning, to which Eikawa inquired what he thought his salary was for, stating that a combination of Chunabiu and NEET such as himself would be extremely lucky to have a job. Meguri pondered that he was still a high school student, not going to deny the Chunabiu part. He further asked about the money, if the order for the previous day still stood, mentioning that her job was to keep the outbound invoice correct. Upon listening to him, Eikawa told him that it was why there were so many things to check there, and that it was very problematic. He informed her that he would send over the data in 5 minutes, to which she angrily exclaimed that he should do it in under 3 minutes and cut the call. After that, Meguri contemplated that at first, he was concerned that Eikawa might feel tired with that working place. But it wasn't like she was a human, but a demon in disguise. She goes to work very early, and was the kind of person who just wanted to do nothing but work. After that, he checked the time and realized that it was time for him to go to school. He immediately got ready and began leaving the home.
Hey, if you haven't subscribed to my channel on YouTube, then do it, or else I will kidnap you and put you in my basement.
Oh, hell.
Soon, he ascertained that the old man had already gone to work. He contemplated that working life was hard everywhere, so he must strive for a leisurely life. Humans were always forced to push themselves meaninglessly to work their whole life to make a living, whether it was studying or going to work and going to school every day just to earn a degree. If Meguri hadn't processed the Sajiri's VR data, then things would have been better. He further thought that his Sajiri was indeed top class, but it wasn't like he could have a chance with the real thing. If he could have a closer relationship with a real human, then he wouldn't need VR. Moreover, he wondered what could even happen between a school idol and a guy like himself. However, things were not looking bad, and it would be useful if he was going to apply to a 3D GC company or graphic stuff. Still, everything related to the body data of a Sajiri was based on the F Exodia Exodus, and he only changed the face. Moreover, he had never seen a Sajiri's body before, so there were no measurements. Shortly after, when he reached the classroom, he was welcomed by a Sajiri herself. The real deal was in front of him, and it was true that things that he created could never compare with the real deal. Soon, he realized that he had to say hello back. However, before he could say anything to her, he got interrupted by a boy who was right behind him. He was Ikonamiya Akira, the best guy among the boys. He was from a wealthy and powerful family, great in height, a basketball player, and very good at games. He also took part in the F1 racing of the World of Sports. Just then, he got away as he realized that he might be blocking the road. As Daomagiri ventured ahead in the classroom, he saw Shizuka Ishinen sitting quietly beside the window. Shizuka was another lonely person without friends in Class 2A, so Daomagiri pondered why she was so distant with everyone. However, he didn't realize that he had been staring at her for quite a while, and as soon as she caught him staring, he moved his gaze away. Shizuka had the cold face as usual, so he wondered if she was thinking about some serious problems. Just then, a student named Agia abruptly barged in the classroom and questioned why everyone was silent, further asking if they knew about the news. Upon asking, Agia informed everyone that the society visit was declared already. Akira stated that it was in the auditorium, but it had been moved to the classroom. Agia further mentioned that the teacher was calling them, while Daomagiri thought that he should just say that in the first place. When all the students began leaving the classroom, a Sajiri went to Akira and asked where he wanted to go, to which he responded that he was going to Rome's Colosseum. Meanwhile, Daomagiri contemplated that the use of VR systems for education would begin that day, starting with a worldwide heritage tour. Speaking about that, he further pondered that the next generation of VR could actually support Exodia Exodus, but the commercial version hadn't been released yet. After that, Akira asked about a Sajiri's preference, and she told him that she wanted to go to France's Mont Saint-Michel. Meanwhile, the other students mentioned that they were super excited as they were going to travel abroad, and it was their first time using the VR system. On the other hand, Daomagiri was as silent as a retard. Even someone like Shizuka could go with other people. For his part, he had never been talked to by anyone. However, he didn't feel sad, but he was feeling pleasant about it. According to Daomagiri, that kind of interaction only puts a strain on everything, such as money, spirit, and body too. Conversation was only a waste of time, and time was as precious as gold and silver, so he wouldn't bother throwing his time away. Daomagiri kept telling himself that he wasn't lonely and wasn't a boring person, so there was no need to meet anyone. He decided to choose a random mode because for him, going to a place without any prior knowledge was true fun. And moreover, lonely people had their own way to enjoy themselves. Suddenly, the focus transitioned to a dark hue where Daomagiri wondered when he fell asleep upon looking at the darkness. His eyes were still open, but he couldn't comprehend why he was surrounded by the darkness. Suddenly, his view began zooming in as though he was seeing neuron cells or an integrated circuit. He couldn't understand the weird process of logging in, and pondered whether he would be in another world when he opened his eyes. He desperately hoped that if he was indeed being reincarnated, then there should be a hot girl right in front of him. Someone with pink hair or a blonde would be nice. It would be a fantastic start for a story. However, his expectations shattered when he found himself amidst a huge battle between creatures and humans. The intense battle between numerous creatures and humans was being showcased in front of him. He couldn't understand that world's heritage. Daomagiri couldn't believe that there was a war going on, but that's not the society visit either. When he glanced around the area, he found a dark castle with an evil atmosphere in the distance, and he knew that it couldn't be any castle on Earth. Panic gripped him as he started looking for the exit button. He screamed for the controller, saying that he wanted to get out of there. Just then, he noticed various people who kept staring at him, much more terrifying than he could pee himself. Suddenly, a guy, akin to a werewolf, came with a huge backup of a pack behind him, and Daomagiri stated that he didn't know who he was, but he was surely dangerous, and looking at his appearance, Daomagiri could tell that he was a vanguard. That guy charged straight at Daomagiri, which made him scared to death. That was just a game, but it was so scary for him. He pondered if that was a bug or a server error as he went after everyone. So why was he the only one who ended up at that place? The werewolf who was coming towards Daomagiri flew past him and asked him to not stray behind, further calling him king. That statement made Daomagiri extremely confused, and he wondered if that werewolf was the leader of that pack. The werewolf laughed as if he wanted to eat him, but Daomagiri couldn't anticipate where that guy was looking. Subsequently, Daomagiri looked behind him and saw a huge force was waiting, and that force contained all of his classmates, including a Sajiri. He contemplated that he just met her a few minutes before, but now it felt completely unusual. He glanced at her suit and pondered what it was, but the most important thing to do now was to reunite with her. Just then, a Sajiri stepped forward and propounded that the opportunity was right in front of them, so they should be afraid and must stop the enemy. After that, Daomagiri also saw Ikonomiya Akira, who commanded the Lancers to move forward. He realized that they were all his classmates disguised as knights, and they began to advance forward, stating that the chance to kill him was right there. Daomagiri's eyes were filled with tears as he thought that no one really cared whether he lived or died. After that, a Sajiri charged right at him and attacked him with her sword. However, he was able to block the attack with his arm, but he couldn't anticipate why he had the metal arms. He pondered if it was really his arm, and moreover, he noticed the number 20 right after he got hit by a Sajiri. After the attack, a Sajiri exclaimed that it was quite hard, and began warning him to try to withstand her next attack. Right then, a strange aura enveloped her entire body, and as she attacked him with her full power using lightning, Daomagiri saw that the number had now turned to 60. Comprehending the situation, he wondered if it was the damage that he had received. He further contemplated if that was an RPG game, or someone had reinstalled the program since the last visit, but he couldn't understand why a Sajiri hit him. He believed that the enemy was the Demon King back there. He tried to explain to a Sajiri that the enemy was on the other side, pointing in a certain direction. However, the werewolf came and asked if the reason he pointed right at him was that he wanted to crush them together, further calling him Demon King. Upon hearing him, Daomagiri realized that the werewolf wasn't the Demon King. After that, the knights were ordered to get into formation and put their shields forward. Upon seeing that, Daomagiri thought that those silver shields were just like mirrors, and there was an item in Exodia Exodus that looked just the same. He further pondered that if he was not mistaken, then those shields were magic resistance. He couldn't read the stats carefully, so he didn't know for sure. However, he was awestruck when he saw a reflection of a huge armored demon on those shields, and after much contemplation, he realized that the armored demon was none other than him. Seeing his reflection, Daomagiri couldn't believe that it was really him. Just then, Akira commanded Shizuka to stop his movements, and as a dark black fog wrapped around him, he began taking small damages and got the status of poisoned and paralyzed. He saw Shizuka right beside him and knew that she was the one casting them on him. Subsequently, Akira ordered the tankers to stay up front and block its attacks. A Sajiri and Akira swiftly went past him and attacked him instantly from behind. Each attack did a little damage, but getting attacked by so many people at once was so overwhelming for him, and when he noticed his HP bar, he saw that he had only 500 HP left. He contemplated whether he would die if this continued. He stated that there was no way and lamented it all as a game, but even if that was just a game, there was no proof that he would be fine even after he died there. Meanwhile, a Sajiri kept attacking him relentlessly, exclaiming that they would definitely return to their world. Akira boosted everyone by saying that it would take them just a little more till they could beat it.
He commanded them to give it all and beat it, so that they could return to their world.
Upon hearing all that, Daomagiri contemplated whether they would actually return to their world by killing him. He couldn't grasp the fact that he was getting killed by his own classmates. Daomagiri couldn't take it anymore, and he mustered up all of his strength and created a huge shockwave which sent everyone flying. Seeing his own powers, Daomagiri couldn't believe that he did all that, as he was only trying to push them away from him. However, when he saw a Sajiri injured on the ground, he fell on his knees, wondering if she was dead. Saddened, he bowed before her, explaining that this wasn't his intention. Seeing the Demon King all weakened, Akira exclaimed that they shouldn't let a Sajiri's sacrifice be in vain. Akira once again attacked him from behind, stripping him off of his 100 HP. On the other hand, Daomagiri was still in grief that a Sajiri was killed by him. He kept praying for her to wake up, and wondered if there should be a resurrection spell which would help her to wake up. As he found no way of getting a Sajiri back alive, he called for God. Right after then, the cloud burst open and a woman, who looked like an angel with wings, descended below. She let out a faint smile and politely requested everyone to just die. As soon as she said those words, there was a huge rumble on the ground as everyone began disappearing, including a Sajiri. After that, the angel came to him and embraced him. While Daomagiri seemed confused and began asking about her stutteringly, she told him that he had to call her name, Fornius, correctly. She further stated that her heart would always belong to her hell shaft. Dalmagiri inquired if she was Fornius, and she affirmed it. Dalmagiri then remembered that this girl was Fornius, the fallen anger. Her database, which he received from the company, seemed to have an affection tendency set up. It was her cute design that drew his attention. Fornius assured him that he could relax now since she was there, and stated that she would prove her use to him right away. Just then, Dalmagiri pondered that she was calling him Master Hell Shaft, and he couldn't understand what kind of situation he was in. Momentarily, one of the members of the Knights, Agia, exclaimed that the Demon King's powerful General Fornius was there too. Now they had a very little chance of winning. However, before he could say anything more, that werewolf guy, Gracia, lunged at him and delivered a powerful blow, which sent him flying. After that, he inquired about Dalmagiri's well-being, mentioning that with his faithful servant Gracia there, even a 1,000-man army posed no threat. He further asked Dalmagiri to rest assured and watch the show. Simultaneously, Dalmagiri was amazed that Gracia defeated the army all by himself, which Akira commanded. Fornius asked if everything was all right, as he seemed a bit strange, and she further called him my lord. Dalmagiri pondered that he kept wondering who that lord was, but now he understood that it was him. Just then, another girl from Akira's army advanced forward, questioning how he dared to do that before her, calling him a filthy demon king. Dalmagiri recognized her as Busujima Megu from 2nd year Class A, and she was in the top group of the class. He also set aside a few moments to marvel at her cute outfit. Busujima complained that it was all of his fault, so he had to die. But a man suddenly came in front of her, which made her startled. However, she was captivated by his handsome looks and got so carried away that he instantly grabbed her and bit her neck, making her screech in pain. Meanwhile, Dalmagiri wondered what they were doing in a place like that, and what kind of situation did that just turn into. Suddenly, he saw her HP decreasing gradually, and saw that her body was shrinking. Just then, he wondered if that guy who was biting her neck was a vampire. That guy, Adora, questioned how dare that filthy human mouth spoke such insolence to their king. Such an act was unacceptable, so it was inevitable that she would be sentenced to death. After that, he told Gracia that if he had fought properly, then their lord wouldn't have been violated by those mortals' swords. He further said that a wild beast like him didn't deserve to serve their king. Frustrated, Gracia told him to shut up and stated that it was because of Adora's stupid messed up plan, and that he didn't recall his appearance on the battlefield as part of the plan. In response, Adora said that Gracia's behavior was what ruined his perfect plan, and that he knew from the start that he was not capable of that position, and now he was blaming his master plan, further calling him an incompetent bacteria. Angered by his statement, Gracia unsheathed his claws and mentioned that it looked like Adora needed to be taught some lessons. On the other hand, Adora stated that there was a dog whose mouth needed to be sealed. Dalmagiri pondered if that was an internal divergence. Just then, both Gracia and Adora lunged at each other. However, an arrow came towards them, piercing the air, and blew the area around them. Dalmagiri was awestruck upon seeing that, and when he turned around, he saw an elf holding a bow. He was astounded and couldn't believe that the explosion was the work of an arrow, as the impact looked like it was caused by a rocket. Gracia called Satanasia a scumbag and asked what was that about. Ignoring him, Satanasia shot another arrow towards him, which transformed into a colossal dragon and struck at him. Just then, Satanasia teleported to Dalmagiri and stated that men were such dumb animals, but she told Dalmagiri that it didn't apply to him as he was on a different level, and that she loved him. However, he was astonished as he pondered since when did she stand beside him. She was at least 100 meters away from him when she shot the arrow, so he couldn't comprehend how she came beside him in an instant. Right then, he also recognized her character as a dark elf, Satanasia, further gawking at her fuller breasts, thinking about her Ekai design. She called them dumb for fighting at a time like that, and mentioned that even Hell Shaft was speechless at their behavior. Adora stated that he didn't remember assigning her as their superior, while Gracia said that she hadn't even done anything since the start of the fight. In response, she expressed that it might be the right time to prove her overwhelming power in the Hell Sector Legion. Furthermore, she inquired if they liked to have a competition to see who killed the most enemies. Enthusiastically, Gracia told her that it was a good idea, and asked her to count him in. Adora mentioned that he had no intention of competing against a low level like Gracia, but stated that she could see it as eliminating those who wanted to threaten Infirmia Castle's safety. Fornius also chimed in and said that she wanted to join too, as it sounded fun. That was the Hell Sector Legion, consisting of Demon King's 4 mightiest generals. Terrifying, yet flawless. Gracia, the werewolf, Adora, the vampire, Fornius, the fallen angel, and Satanasia, the dark elf. As the battle commenced, Gracia and Adora lunged at the knights and began defeating them one by one. Fornius excitedly told Satanasia to join in, stating that they can't lose to those men, and she would prove her loyalty to Hell Shaft. Amidst the battle, Shizuka mentioned that she thought luck was on their side to have Hell Shaft's presence in the battlefield, but she couldn't believe that he used himself as a decoy. On the other hand, Akira, defeated on the ground, suggested that they should retrieve as there was nothing they could do. He said that it took them all that time looking for a chance to attack the Demon King's castle, and that they must seize Infirmia and reach Hell's Gate no matter what. After that, Akira commanded all the forces to fall back and gather their troops at Grenek, stating that if something happens, their alternative meeting point would be Kardat. He suggested them all to retrieve from the battlefield at full speed, and also not to forget to use their potions. As Daomagiri had anticipated, they were all NPCs except for his classmates. He wondered if that was the extra content from the castle raiding quest. As all of Akira's army fell back, the 4 mightiest generals raised their arms in victory. Adora declared and asked everyone to raise their voice for their glorious victory, and for their great and mighty overlord of that world, Demon King Hell Shaft. All of the monsters hooted joyfully and started chanting the name of Hell. That world was Exodia Exodus, an advanced MMORPG using the latest VR interface. It was developed by Hell Domain Company. Daomagiri's part-time job was to design the characters in the game, and the one he was in charge of was the protectors of the Infirmia Castle and Hell's Gate. The final main quest and the game's ultimate boss was Demon King Hell Shaft. As the whole army of the Infirmia Castle, including the 4 generals, were celebrating their victory, Daomagiri decided to calm down and think about it. His school installed a next generation of VR system for educational purposes, but when he logged in, this all happened. Both Fornius and Satanisha were standing beside him, while he was sitting gracefully in the castle. Fornius asked what was the matter as he didn't seem happy. She further told him that he was so incredible that she was willing to make him comfortable. Meanwhile, Satanisha asked what he thought about her breasts, stating that they might not be as soft as Fornius, but their size was incredible. In reality, Daomagiri didn't mind all those silly questions, and he could even describe the feeling on his arms as they were so soft. It was the same VR system, but it was much better than when he designed a Sajiri. He also thought that Fornius' outfit was incredible. It was made out of steel, but he could feel it like he was touching her skin directly. A newly developed MMORPG, Exodia Exodus, was not just a game. It was like creating a new world, a new experience. It would translate human awareness from their brain into data and then copy it into the server. In short, all they needed to do was create data about a world. Then they could freely travel to any foreign country or even fantasy worlds. That was Daomagiri's first time experiencing it. Even though his part-time job was related to the ending of the story, all he did was designing characteristics, dialogues, and recording CG movements. The character he was in charge of was Demon King Hell Shaft, a very important character, but there were delays in the script-making department, so he designed nearly the entire character himself, standing in front of the camera and microphone to record all of its movements and dialogues. It was quite embarrassing at first, but later he found it pretty interesting. It was a part of his job after all. In the end, the dialogue lines were created based on traits of characters, and I would create a unique characteristic based on real-time events. Daomagiri hadn't thought that all the characters' traits would match their detailed production sheet, even the sexy stats and erotic lines. Fornius asked Daomagiri to go to their room so that she would try her best to please her master. Upon hearing that, Daomagiri was caught off guard as he pondered how he could respond to that. He tried to look for the checkpoints but couldn't find one. He couldn't understand what to do in such a situation, and wished that they had added pre-made dialogue options. Panicked, Daomagiri exclaimed that it wasn't like he hated that, but he wasn't just used to it. After a brief moment, Fornius inquired if he was really Hell Shaft, while Satanisha mentioned that there was something odd about him. Daomagiri told them that he actually didn't even know who was inside him anymore, but it was definitely not the real one. Upon hearing him, their lovey-dovey expression soon paled and turned into a suspicious one. Their loyalty bar also decreased from 100 to 30. Daomagiri thought about their changed attitude and atmosphere, and wondered if he made the wrong choice. Just then, Adora came and requested if he could say what he normally said to them. As soon as he heard them wanting him to deliver a speech, he began sweating. He knew that he would get nervous when standing in front of people, and asked if they could just skip that part. Upon hearing him, Adora looked at him suspiciously. Daomagiri could feel the air getting colder, and saw Fornius and Satanisha standing so far away from him. He knew that the atmosphere was getting a little out of control, so advanced forward and decided to deliver a speech. As he stood before everyone, he thanked everyone for their hard work, stating that he was still a little confused about the situation, and that, speaking the lines he created himself, felt a little weird for him. But before he could say anything further, Adora delivered a powerful blow at him, leading Dumeguri to fall on the ground. Adora called him a bastard and inquired who he was. Panic-stricken, he told them that he was the Demon King, but Adora's loyalty bar immediately descended to 0. Seeing their loyalty bar, Dumeguri thought it was talking about their trust, which meant that Adora had no trust in him. Not only did he lose all his trust, but he also wanted to kill him. A huge commotion rose among the army, questioning where the real king was. Dumeguri's anxiety reached its peak as he knew that he was going to be killed by them. Dumeguri couldn't understand the weird storyline that the final boss was slain by his subordinates. However, since it was just a game, he thought that he might not be killed in the real world, and would just return to his own world. But he couldn't take a risk as there was nothing to do if he died there for real. His brain wasn't working, and the situation was getting really bad. He wondered how he could prove his identity to them. Just then, he thought about what Adora had said earlier about him saying his usual lines which he normally said. He realized that he knew those lines as he was the one who created their voices, their movements, and most importantly, their hell shaft. Adora threatened him to torture him to death as he dared to disguise as their king. Gracia also asserted that he would beat the hell out of that fake king. Meanwhile, Fornius and Satanacia said that they would find the real hell shaft after interrogating the fake one. However, as Dumeguri believed that he was the real hell shaft, an immense strength overpowered him, and he threw everyone flying away with his massive shockwave. Upon seeing his prowess, the 4 generals were left in awe. They knew that the power and strength that could equal heaven and hell, overcoming all existence. The incredible Demon King, the rising flame of the eternal pit, and the king of the demon realm was none other than of hell shafts. That was the strange pose that even Dumeguri didn't know, but he designed that character himself, including hell shaft's voice. That game was still being developed and all the voices were still in beta, so they would probably still use his voice. Overwhelmed by such prowess, Adora inquired if he was hell shaft. However, hell shaft called them foolish servants and exclaimed that they had guts calling him a bastard. He further inquired if their victory blinded their vision, that he wanted Hell Shaft to prove himself that badly. Adora stated that Hell Shaft was acting like a coward all of a sudden, to which Dumeguri told him that he praised his bravery for criticizing him. He further exclaimed that their strength was futile in front of him, and that was the reason why he went to the front line to witness their incompetence with his own eyes. He stated that they were all worthless fools. He then turned to Adora and questioned what was the race that stood above all, to which he obediently answered that it was their glorious demon race. Dumeguri further asked who was the overlord that ruled them all, and Adora answered that it was the absolute ruler above all races. As fear overlapped with Adora, he bowed before Dumeguri and exclaimed that it was their honor to be able to speak his name, and that they pledged their lives to his commands, their honorable and wise leader Demon King Hell Shaft. As everyone began chanting his name, Adora apologized to him for his insolence, and his loyalty bar immediately jumped back from 0 to 70, which made Dumeguri really relieved. He forgave Adora, but Adora stated that he deserved to die for doubting and pointing his sword towards the king, so he would use his life to atone for his sins. As soon as he began serving his neck with his sword, Dumeguri stopped him immediately. Adora asked why he was stopping him, stating that he couldn't live with his name dishonored like that, to which Dumeguri mentioned that he needed to understand his existence. He further stated that Adora's life belonged to him, and he wouldn't forgive him if he dared to give up on his life without his permission, so he could only die when he told him to. Upon hearing him, Adora's loyalty bar maxed out to 100, which made Dumeguri really stunned. However, he knew that if he kept staying there, he would end up saying the wrong thing again, so he should go back to his room. Dumeguri exclaimed that he was pleased with his loyalty, so now he wanted to go and rest, and told everyone that they could have fun. As soon as he left, Dumeguri fell to his knees, while saying that he made it out alive. He was so scared that he almost cried. He was lucky that all the data he sent was updated into the beta. He could have died if the data hadn't been applied. Soon after, he realized that he couldn't just sit there. If he was seen like that, then all of his hard work would be ruined. After that, he thought about what to do from now on. He needed to check if he could remove that armor, but he needed to head back to his room first. He needed to get to Hell Shaft's room, so he had to find it first. He opened his menu screen and pondered if he could find it there, but he noticed that there was a logout option in the corner. He stated that it would be fine if he could log out, but he couldn't do so. It was working, so Dumeguri questioned how the hell he could return to his own world. There was no mail from the company's developers either. After that, he decided to check his stats. In his stats, it was written that his name was Hell Shaft and his race was the Demon King. His level was not displayed there, so he thought that it might be because he was the final boss. Next was mentioned that he was a mage with strong physical attack. In other words, he was a magic swordsman, so he should be able to use proper magic attacks. However, there was another panel on which ecstasy and paradise was written, which he had no idea about. These didn't sound good to him, but he couldn't comprehend how he could get away with that, as he was a demon king that didn't know any magic spells. Even though he had a map, he didn't know where his room was. The system also had teleports, but there were no options, which made him guess that he could only teleport to places he already visited. He decided to look around for a bit, thinking that he was lucky that all the minions were having a party, so there was nothing to worry about. As he was venturing in the corridor, he heard a commotion coming from a room where a slave was getting scolded by their supervisor about their work. The supervisor screamed and asked the woman to keep working for 24 hours and commanded her to go to the basement to get more materials and wine. However, the woman stated that there was a strange creature in the basement, and it was disgusting even just looking at those tentacles. But the supervisor chided her and exclaimed that he didn't care and immediately commanded her to go. As the woman tried to go through the door, she got bumped by Daumagiri on her way. She inquired why he was standing at the door, but as soon as Daumagiri saw her, he realized that she was none other than Aikawa. Daumagiri knew that she was definitely not an NPC, as he knew that this person was a Hell Domains official, Aikawa Shuko, though he could see her inner thighs as she fell in such a way after bumping into him. Upon seeing him, her eyes trembled in fear that she abruptly jumped from his way, and bowed her head as down as possible, further apologizing to him, stating that she hoped her presence didn't offend him. Meanwhile, Daumagiri was amazed by her full backflip followed by a doja. He stated that her doja was beautifully executed, and more importantly, he inquired what she was doing there. She told him that she hadn't realized Hellshaft's algorithm was that good. However, he inquired if she was Aikawa, further revealing his identity that he was Daumagiri. Later on, they both went into his room, and Daumagiri inquired why she became a slave there, further commenting on her bizarre outfit. She immediately told him to shut up and exclaimed that it wasn't her wish to wear that kind of thing. Daumagiri apologized to her while thinking that ever since he first met her, it had been extremely difficult to talk to her, as she was so aggressive and scary. When the data he gave had any kind of mistake, rather than talking normally, she would become extremely hostile. He further pondered that he knew he wasn't fit to work at that company. However, Aikawa's face suddenly flushed as she inquired if he saw it. That reminded him that he took a glance inside her skirt when she fell, but he denied immediately. Aikawa clicked her tongue in frustration and told him that he was going to pay for this. In response, Daumagiri hastily retorted that he hadn't seen anything, and he didn't know what she was talking about. He swore that he wouldn't tell anyone about her secret, and he would always keep it deep inside his heart. Upon hearing him, Aikawa exclaimed that if he took a vow like that, there was a chance she might receive karma with men until Daumagiri died. She further asked if he was trying to curse her. After she calmed down, she asked him to not speak about it to anyone, to which he stated that there was no one for him to tell. Moreover, Aikawa informed him that there was no internet there. Daumagiri mentioned that if she wanted to become a criminal to take revenge on him, he would be fine with that, to which she explained that she didn't mean to threaten him like that. However, she further warned him that she would use all of her social capabilities to make his life a living hell if he spoiled any of that out. After that, she inquired that if he was already the Demon King, then why didn't she recognize him before, further wondering if he didn't really see her even once. He inquired whether it was their first time meeting in that world, to which Aikawa stated that she had been there for half a year, and what she wanted to ask was why he didn't even see her after all this time. As soon as he heard her, Daumagiri's eyes remained wide open in astonishment, as he hadn't anticipated that she was there for half a year. He mentioned that it was impossible as it had only been a while since he woke up, and after that, he realized that he was in that body and people kept trying to kill him time after time when he was unaware of everything. After listening to him, she told him that there might be a glitch, so that was why his login process was slower than everyone else. Thinking about it the other way, she informed him that it was pure luck he was able to log in safely. Normally, if there was an error while someone's awareness data was being transferred, their consciousness would be shattered, which means they would die. Hearing it, Daumagiri asked her to stop speaking of such horrible things. She inquired if he somewhat understood his current situation, to which he responded that he got nothing. She called him dumb and asked if he didn't have any kind of analyzing, understanding, or imagining skills. Daumagiri contemplated that he did figure something out, but he got no proof, and that, if she already knew something, then it would be much easier for her to just spill it out. After that, she notified him that there was a huge error. The brain data of the entire group of students and managing officials that went into that game was destroyed. In other words, they were all in a vegetative state. Daomagiri exclaimed that this joke wasn't funny, to which she stated that it wasn't a joke, and that was why, in order to restore their data in the outside world, the emergency measure to fix that error within 24 hours had been performed. He asked if Aikawa could actually communicate with the outside world because his toolbar didn't have any function to contact the admin, so he was kind of worried. Aikawa explained that because her system was developed differently, she could communicate with the outside world, but she couldn't send any information, she could only receive it from outside. Everyone in that world didn't know about their situation, and Aikawa's awareness data were all inside the system. Only her body was being connected to a medical device to sustain her existence. However, she didn't know how long it could hold. At that moment, all of their consciousness was being stored inside the system, which means there was still a chance to bring them back to their bodies and wake up. But it would take at least 1 year for that technology to be fully completed. It means that their lives depended entirely on the developers. He further inquired why they were inside Exodia Exodus when they were supposed to be in their classrooms. She explained that it was quite complicated. According to her explanation, the new VR system's original usage was for Exodia Exodus, and it had been developed into an educational platform through the NNT system. The developer of Exodia Exodus, Hell's Domain, and the NNT system both belong to a holiday company, and to save up some of the developing fees due to high expenses, they used the same interface for the new VR. It seemed there had been a major plan proposed to earn profit from developers by dividing product development into different segments that used the same network, which was the cause of the error. The worst thing was that the user's data was being transferred and merged with the data of Exodia Exodus, and that was the reason why all the players were in this game.